didn't rob a bank, breach a vault, or beat the stock market with some genius algorithm. Prosecutors say they stole a few phone numbers tied to the SEC's filing system and turned that into roughly $37 million before the public saw the news. And that's the part that makes this case different. This was not about bragging rights, not about crypto wallets, not even mainly about passwords. It was about time. A few stolen minutes on Wall Street can be worth more than a safe full of cash. In January 2024, federal prosecutors announced a guilty plea from one of the men tied to a long-running conspiracy that investigators say used SIM swapping and stolen credentials to access embargoed earnings releases filed through the SEC's EDGAR system. That access, according to the DOJ, helped traders place positions before the market could react. If you like cases where cybercrime collides with money, markets, and real-world consequences, subscribe. I dig through the court records, not just the headlines. The victim here wasn't just one company. It was the idea that markets move on public information arriving at the same time for everyone. Public companies sent earnings reports to the SEC. Newswires prepared the releases under embargo. Investors waited for the clock. And somewhere in that chain, according to prosecutors, a group found a side door. What strikes me about this case is how old school the core crime really was. This was insider trading logic with cybercrime tools. Same greed, different lockpick. According to court records and earlier SEC and DOJ filings tied to the scheme, the operation targeted phone numbers connected to people or entities involved in the filing and distribution pipeline. A SIM swap, at a high level, is when a criminal tricks or bribes their way into moving someone's phone number onto a SIM card they control. Suddenly, calls and text messages meant for the victim go somewhere else. That matters because phone numbers are often used for identity checks, password resets, and multi-factor authentication, the extra code that is supposed to keep intruders out. You can hear the elegance of the crime in that detail. They didn't need to smash through the front door if the reset code arrived in their pocket. Investigators say that from there, members of the conspiracy accessed non-public earnings information before release, then used brokerage accounts to trade ahead of the announcements. When the earnings became public and the stock moved, they were already in position. Read that again in human terms. They were not stealing the report itself as a souvenir. They were stealing the gap between private knowledge and public knowledge, the tiny stretch of time where the rest of the market was still blind. And once you see it that way, the whole scheme changes shape. It stops looking like a telecom scam and starts looking like a precision attack on market fairness. Federal authorities have described the broader conspiracy in past charging documents as generating approximately $37 million in illegal trading profits. Public reporting over the years connected the case to the compromise of EDGAR-related accounts and to earnings releases from numerous companies before publication. In 2021, the SEC itself said 3 Ukraine-based individuals were charged for hacking into the filing system and trading on stolen non-public information. In 2022, the SEC itself said 3 Ukraine-based individuals were charged for hacking into the filing system and trading on stolen non-public information. Later cases and pleas added more pieces. Quick question for you. What was worse here, the telecom weakness that enabled the SIM swaps, or the market infrastructure still relying on phone-linked trust for high-value access? Tell me in the comments. The timeline matters The original SEC intrusion became public years ago, after regulators disclosed that Edgar had been hacked and might have provided a basis for illicit gain. That alone was a stunning admission. A system built to level the playing field may have helped tilt it. Then the court documents began filling in the mechanics. Not every detail is public, and we should be careful there. But the broad pattern is clear from the indictments and pleas. Obtain control over phone numbers or credentials tied to the pipeline. Get into accounts holding embargoed information. Pass that information to traders. Place bets before the earnings hit the tape. No ski masks. No getaway car. Just clocks, authentication flows, and order books. One thing I keep coming back to is how small the first move can look. A phone number sounds trivial, disposable, replaceable, something customer support deals with every day. But in the wrong context, that number is a master key wearing a cheap disguise. How many institutions still treat phone possession like proof of identity? How many high-value workflows still assume the SMS code is good enough?
And there's another uncomfortable layer. When most people hear SIM swapping, they think of drained crypto accounts, influencer hacks, maybe stolen social media handles. This case points somewhere colder. The same tactic could be used not just to take what you own, but to take your place in a decision chain that moves markets. That is a different class of damage. Because someone always pays. Not just the traders on the wrong side of the transaction. Confidence pays. Ordinary investors pay. Companies whose results are supposed to reach everyone at once pay. The basic promise of a public market, that disclosure hits the public fairly, takes the hit. When I read through the case background, that was the detail that stayed with me.
Not the money, even though $37 million is a lot of money. It was the theft of sequence. First them, then everyone else. And here's the turn in the story. The phone hijacks were only the visible crime. The deeper target was embargo. The period when a filing exists. People in the chain can see it, but the market cannot. That hidden layer explains why this conspiracy mattered so much. If you only call it a SIM swap case, it sounds like telecom fraud with a financial aftershock. According to prosecutors, it was closer to a covert attack on the timing mechanism of modern disclosure. Ask yourself this. If a market depends on equal access to information, what happens when criminals can buy or steal a few minutes before the opening bell? Isn't that just insider trading with a cyber entry point? In my view, yes. And that's why this case sits at the intersection of securities enforcement and cybercrime, not neatly inside either one. Urgent. The January 2024 guilty plea matters because pleas cut through some of the fog. They do not answer every question, but they show the case survived long enough and with enough evidence for at least one defendant to admit guilt. In federal cyber cases, that is not a small milestone. It means years after the original compromise, the trail still held. Public reporting identified the defendant as part of the conspiracy tied to the SEC filing hack and trade scheme. The Justice Department said the operation used stolen credentials and SIM swapping to obtain access and trade on confidential earnings information. Time. Monetized. If that idea hits you the way it hit me, that a few minutes of stolen silence could be worth tens of millions, leave a like. This is exactly the kind of case that deserves more attention than it gets. The legacy is bigger than one guilty plea. This case pushed a hard lesson into the open. Authentication is not just an IT issue when the account controls market-moving information. It is a financial integrity issue, a securities issue, a trust issue. The SEC had already hardened parts of Edgar after the breach, and later rolled out stronger access controls, including multi-factor changes for filers. Across the industry, the warning was obvious. If your disclosure pipeline depends on weak recovery channels, vendor access, or SMS-based trust, you may be defending the wrong door. There's a bitter irony here. Markets spend fortunes chasing microseconds through fiber routes, co-location, and high-speed execution. This crew, prosecutors say, found a way to steal value by capturing minutes through account access and phone control. Not faster trading, earlier truth. Gone. A few minutes. About $37 million. Cases like this remind us that cybercrime doesn't always look like chaos on a screen. Sometimes it looks clean, quiet, professional. A missing text message, a reset prompt, an earnings release that reaches the wrong eyes first. And maybe that's the real lesson. The most dangerous breach is not always the one that destroys data. Sometimes it's the one that rearranges who gets to know reality first. If true crime text fascinates you, especially the cases pulled from indictments, pleas, and enforcement records instead of recycled headlines, subscribe and join me here. There's always another breach that looked small right up until the money moved.